Act 1, The Incident. It was supposed to be a night of warmth, laughter, and family. December 24th, 2008, Covina, California. The Ortega family gathered in their suburban home to celebrate Christmas Eve. Nearly 25 people under one roof. Parents, children, grandchildren. 3 generations enjoying tamales, card games, and holiday cheer. At 11:30 p.m., the front doorbell rang. An 8-year-old girl squealed, "Santa!" as she raced to the door. But what entered wasn't a bearer of gifts. It was a monster dressed in red velvet and white fur. Bruce Jeffrey Pardo, wearing a full Santa Claus suit, raised a handgun and shot the little girl in the face. Within seconds, chaos erupted. Screams tore through the night as Bruce opened fire at close range. Family members fell. The scent of cinnamon and pine was replaced by gunpowder and blood. Then, as if the slaughter wasn't enough, he unlatched a homemade flamethrower and doused the house in fire. By the time first responders arrived, the Ortega home was engulfed in flames reaching 50 feet into the sky. 9 people were dead. The house was reduced to smoldering ash. What could drive a man to murder his ex-wife's entire family on Christmas Eve? Act 2, Timeline of Discovery. The fire was so intense that it took 80 firefighters over an hour to extinguish the flames. Investigators initially couldn't even count the bodies. They had to rely on dental records, medical charts, and process of elimination. Inside the ashes, charred Christmas decorations, melted furniture, and what used to be a dining table. The same table where 5 members of the Ortega family had been hiding. Police soon pieced together the horror. Papa Joseph Ortega and his wife Alicia had been married 53 years. They were gunned down beside their daughters Sylvia, Alicia Jr., and Leticia. 2 sons, James and Charles, tried to fight Bruce. Both were shot. In the backyard where kids had been playing video games minutes earlier, blood trails and footprints marked their desperate escape. Michael Ortiz, 17, never made it out. He was found upstairs, body burned beyond recognition. The only survivors were those lucky enough to be in the far reaches of the home, or quick enough to flee. But one person survived that no one expected, the 8-year-old girl who had opened the door. Shot in the jaw, she lived. Her mother, Leticia, would later say, "She turned her head at the last second. That's the only reason she's alive." Act 3, The Victims and Their Life. The Ortegas were the epitome of a close-knit immigrant family. Joseph and Alicia had come from Mexico decades earlier, building a peaceful life through hard work. Joseph owned a painting business. Alicia was the heart of the family, cooking, organizing, holding everyone together. Their 5 children were all adults now, raising their own kids. Sylvia, Bruce Pardo's ex-wife, was a gentle spirit, beloved for her generosity and calm. She had 3 children from previous marriages, and her divorce from Bruce had been recent. Messy, but supposedly behind her. Each person killed had a story, a future, a life that was suddenly erased. 2 of the daughters-in-law were present. One survived by hiding under the dining room table. Another died beside her husband. And then there was Michael Ortiz, the teenage grandson who had simply been playing computer games upstairs. He never even had a chance to react. By the end of the night, 3 generations of the Ortega family had been annihilated. What began as a celebration ended as one of the most shocking family massacres in U.S. history. ACT 4, Crime Scene Breakdown. The house was unrecognizable. After the fire, investigators sifted through ash and twisted metal. The living room where gifts had been opened was now blackened rubble. The dining room, where the Ortega family had been enjoying Texas Hold'em, had collapsed in on itself. What once echoed with laughter now held the scent of death and gasoline. Forensics uncovered shell casings scattered across the floor from a 9mm semi-automatic pistol. But that wasn't the worst of it. Bruce had brought multiple weapons and a homemade incendiary device constructed with race car fuel and a pressurized sprayer rigged to torch the house. Outside, a melted patch of Santa suit clung to the sidewalk. Fabric fused with flesh. His plan had backfired. When Bruce ignited the flamethrower, the device exploded, severely burning his own arms and legs. His escape was already falling apart before he even left the scene. Police later found a blue Dodge Caliber nearby, his rental car. Inside, maps, food, water, cash, and a change of clothes. It was a full getaway kit meant to help him vanish, but he never made it far. Act 5, Suspicion and Lies. At first, police didn't know who had done it, but a name quickly surfaced. Bruce Jeffrey Pardo, Sylvia Ortega's ex-husband. Neighbors remembered him from happier times. He was once the smiling groom at a lavish wedding with Sylvia. They had separated just months earlier, their divorce finalized a week before Christmas. But in that time, Bruce had been unraveling. He'd lost his job at Jet Propulsion Laboratory after billing false hours. He owed Sylvia $10,000 in spousal support, yet refused to pay. Friends said he was bitter, obsessed. He told some he'd been wronged by her family and was going to do something about it. Then came the purchases: 5 handguns, a flamethrower, a custom-made Santa suit, a plane ticket to Illinois. The facade of a grieving ex-husband shattered fast. Beneath it was a man consumed by resentment, carefully plotting an act of revenge so calculated. He ordered 18-round magazines from out-of-state gun shops to circumvent California's firearm laws. He wasn't just angry, he was preparing for war. A CT-6, the turning point. Bruce didn't get far. He drove 40 miles to Sylmar, to his brother's house. Burned, bleeding, and humiliated, he walked inside and took his own life. He used one of the same handguns he'd used to murder Sylvia's family, shooting himself in the mouth. When police found him, he was wearing a girdle stuffed with $17,000 in cash, plastic wrapped around his legs. The Santa suit had melted onto his body, seared into his skin. In his rental car, they found explosives. At his home, they discovered what one detective called a virtual bomb factory. Chemicals, weapons, blueprints. This wasn't a spontaneous breakdown. It was months of obsession turned into military-grade revenge. He was dead, but the horror wasn't over. Every new discovery, each gun, each plan, revealed how close he came to inflicting even more damage. And in the center of it all, one question echoed louder than any explosion. How do you stop a man who hides evil behind a smile? Act 7, Psychology and Motive. Bruce Pardo wasn't born a monster. To his co-workers, he was the guy with a charming smile and a steady engineering job at JPL. To his neighbors, he was just another guy mowing the lawn, waving hello. But underneath it all was something darker, something fractured. Bruce had lost control of everything that gave him status. His job, his marriage, his pride. He was deeply narcissistic, incapable of handling rejection, obsessed with keeping up appearances while privately collapsing. When Sylvia left, he didn't just lose a wife. He lost what he saw as a symbol of power, of being a man in control. Divorce wasn't just a breakup to Bruce, it was humiliation. And humiliation, to a man like him, was unforgivable. He began collecting weapons, planning his revenge, telling no one. Each gun, each blueprint, each Santa thread stitched with hatred. This wasn't rage in the moment. It was calculated annihilation. His plan was to erase Sylvia's entire bloodline from existence, to show them that without him, there was no joy, not even at Christmas. And he wore the Santa suit not as a disguise, but as a mockery, a twisted metaphor. The man who once brought gifts was now bringing death. Act 8, Aftermath and Emotional Echo. The flames burned out, but the grief never did. 9 people gone, grandparents, sons, daughters, a teenager, a little girl shot in the face. Survived only because she turned her head in the final second. That child, Katrina Józef-Polski, grew up carrying a scar and a mission. Years later, she became an activist against gun violence. Because what else do you do when your childhood ends at the barrel of a gun dressed like Santa? Her mother, Letitia, who survived by hiding under a table and calling 911, rebuilt her life not through anger, but through defiance. She raised the surviving children, kept Christmas alive for them, told them the Santa who came that night wasn't real. She refused to let that horror consume them. Each year they still gather, they still exchange gifts, they still visit the cemetery on Christmas Eve, keeping the memories of the dead alive, not just in mourning, but in love. Because Bruce wanted to destroy that, and he failed. He may have ended lives, but he couldn't erase the spirit that held that family together. What kind of man plans a massacre for Christmas? What kind of world lets him get that far? The answers don't bring peace, but maybe, just maybe, remembering does.